Hey everyone, welcome to my long delayed spoiler review for Captain America Civil War. I know the movie's been out for 3 weeks and X-Men Apocalypse has just come out, but I've been busy with 2 jobs, so can you blame me? I mean, okay, never mind. We're here, I'm reviewing it right now. If you're new to the channel, when I do a spoiler review, I just want to go over topics of the movie that I can't talk about because they are spoilers, or little details on things that I mentioned in my review that if I talked about more, I would delve into the spoilers. So I made a list of all the things that I wanted to talk about, and I want to start off with the villain of the movie, Zemo, played by Daniel Brühl. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Anyway, he plays Zemo, and throughout the whole movie, you aren't really sure what his motivation is. Like, he does all of these things, but you aren't really given a clear motivation. But as the movie goes on, you find out a little more about him, and you find out his motivation in the end, which is he wants to get revenge on the Avengers because his family died during the Battle of Sokovia. That makes for a very complex villain, and one that's much better than most of the villains they've had, like Whiplash, Malekith, or Ronan. So he heads to this facility that we see in the opening scene of the movie where Bucky was originally held, and Bucky reveals that there are more Winter Soldiers there, so Captain America gets the notion that he's gonna use these Winter Soldiers for an army, we gotta stop him. So then they go there, and Tony Stark ends up following them, but as a friend. This takes place after the giant airport battle, and Tony Stark decides, you know what, Cap? I'll help you out with this case, because you were telling the truth the whole time, and we just didn't believe it. So they go there, but they find out that all the Winter Soldiers have been killed by Zemo. So why is Zemo there in the first place? Well, to show security footage of Bucky Barnes in 1991 on a mission where he kills Howard and Maria Stark, Tony's parents. This was an aspect that we kind of got a taste of in Captain America the Winter Soldier, when Zola is talking about how when history doesn't cooperate, history was changed by Hydra, and they show the Winter Soldier, and they show newspaper articles of Howard and Maria Stark killed in a car crash. So this is that car crash we get to see, and we find out that the Winter Soldier was behind it. And the thing that really gets me is that Tony Stark is seeing the footage, and he's like, wait, I know that road. What is this? What is this? And as the footage plays out and he sees his mother being killed by Bucky, he turns to Cap and says, did you know? I didn't know it was him, but yes, I did know your parents died in a car crash by Hydra. And that is the point where Tony Stark loses his shit. He's like, screw you, Captain America. I'm going to kill your best friend because he murdered my parents. And that's why I really love the final battle at the end, and why, while it's not as creative as the airport battle, it is a more personal fight, and it's very, very brutal. Bucky gets his robotic arm blasted off by Tony Stark, and we truly see Captain America's dark side. One little conversation I love in Avengers Age of Ultron is at the farmhouse when Tony Stark and Steve Rogers are talking to each other while they're chopping wood. And Tony says, I don't trust a guy without a dark side. And Steve says, well, let's just say you haven't seen it yet. And this is the point where we see the dark side, when Captain America turns into a monster just to protect his best friend. And this is another situation where both sides are neither right nor wrong, because Tony Stark is trying to kill Bucky for the death of his parents, which, hey, if we were next to the guy who murdered our mom and dad, that would be our basic instinct too. But Steve Rogers knows that Bucky was being mind-controlled and manipulated, so it's not truly his fault, and that there can be some redemption for Bucky. And while this was going on, Black Panther, T'Challa, followed Tony Stark to where Steve Rogers and Bucky were going in secret, because throughout the whole movie, T'Challa is after Bucky for the death of his father, because Bucky was framed for a bombing during the Sokovia Accords hearing that killed the king of Wakanda, T'Chaka, who was T'Challa's father. But then he finds out that Zemo was the one who planted the bombs. And what I really love, rather than losing his mind and killing Zemo, he has a conversation with him out in the snow as Captain America and Iron Man are beating the shit out of each other. That's when Zemo lays out that There are beings stronger than me that have tried to take out the Avengers, whether together or individually, and have failed. So the only way I can defeat the Avengers is have them turn on each other. And during that whole conversation, T'Challa is all ears. And that's the point where we see Zemo's motivation. And T'Challa, at the end, goes, "Revenge has consumed a lot of people. I'm done letting it consume me." And when Zemo tries to commit suicide, T'Challa actually keeps him from doing that. So it's a really nice moment. And it really does play into the whole theme of revenge. How revenge can be blinding, even if you think it's the right thing. T'Challa getting revenge on Bucky for the death of his father, even though it was blind revenge. And then Tony Stark for wanting to get revenge on Bucky for the death of his parents. It's a really nice aspect that the movie handles very well. And it also shows that these Marvel movies, well, the best ones, are actually a little more serious than people give them credit for. I mean, yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy and Ant-Man are straight up comedies, so that's what they're intended to be, and that's good. But with the Captain America movies and the Avengers movies, we all remember the funny moments in them, no question about it, especially in the Avengers. But if you really look deep down, they are a little more serious than people give them credit for, especially Civil War here. Because you have the Avengers tearing each other apart, you have a villain with a clear motivation, and the ending of the film is rather dark. I mean, it does have a sliver of hope in the end, but the end, the bad guy kind of won. Zemo won by having the Avengers tear each other apart, especially the two leaders, Tony Stark and Steve Rogers. And I really didn't want to do this, but since the movies are similar, I'm going to. With Batman vs. Superman, that movie was trying to be too serious to the point where there's no personality among the characters. So you're just not invested in anything that's going on, with the exception of Batman. And in a way, it does end up being more silly than the movies that have the humorous moments. Because what Civil War does with its humor, it humanizes the characters. It makes them feel more like real people. The conversations feel real. And thus, because these characters feel like real people, you can get invested into the movie more and their dilemmas. And it makes the movie a lot more dark and serious than people give it credit for, as I mentioned. Now let's get into the credit sequences. They're really cool. The first one is with Bucky and Steve Rogers in Wakanda as they put Bucky under ice, trying to figure out how they can save him because, I mean, his arm's gone. He's going to be manipulated again if fallen into the wrong hands, so they decide to put him under ice until they can figure out a solution. And Steve Rogers approaches T'Challa and says, "You know, you're housing us here, so the governments of the world are going to come to you." And T'Challa simply looks out the window and goes, "Let them try." And we basically get to see Wakanda for the first time, a giant Black Panther statue and pretty much a forest. It's pretty much a forest nation, and it just really makes me excited for the Black Panther movie that's coming up. And then the end credit scene takes place in Queens, in Peter Parker's apartment, where he's kind of recovering from the airport battle, and it doesn't do much outside of make us excited for Spider-Man: Homecoming. And the end of that scene says Spider-Man will return, which, hey, I'm really looking forward to both movies. Mainly Black Panther, because I've said in my review, we've seen Spider-Man in several incarnations, and we've seen him done well, but Black Panther has never gotten his chance to shine, so I'm definitely more excited for Black Panther than Spider-Man: Homecoming. One problem I did notice seeing it a second time, though, is that you really feel the length of the movie. While this is still my favorite movie in the MCU, the one advantage the Avengers had was being almost 2.5 hours, but you never feel the length. At the point when I thought the movie was 25 minutes in, it was actually 50 minutes in, which is impressive. Civil War is exactly 2.5 hours long, their longest movie to date, but you feel the length. It's not a bad thing. It's sort of like The Dark Knight in the sense where you feel the length of the movie and you know the movie's really long, but you're never bored. You just ask yourself, what else are they going to do next? But aside from that, Civil War is still a masterpiece. It's got some very great moments here and there. The characters feel real. It's got many jaw-dropping moments, like the appearance of Giant Man, basically a big Ant-Man, during the airport fight. And one of my favorite bits of humor comes when Sharon Carter and Steve Rogers finally kiss on screen. And Bucky and Sam just look at that whole thing and are like, yeah. That's really the impression that your friends would give you if they saw you making out with a girl. It's just, it again makes them feel like real people, and it's awesome. So there's my spoiler review for Captain America Civil War. Tell me about your thoughts on the spoiler moments in Captain America Civil War. And as always, like, comment, subscribe, share me with your friends. Don't forget to check out my official website. You can also follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Periscope, Riff.tv, and if you love what I'm doing, whether it's movie reviews, let's plays, or podcasts, you can go support me on Patreon.com, where you can give a little donation, and in return, you get some special rewards. Don't forget to check out my written work on MoviePilot.com and GeekedOutNation.com, and this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you, there's only one.